It's the 25th of February 2020. It's 3 p.m. UK time. Done 3 videos today. This next one, my last one, is the most important one. I'm looking at the movement of Saturn over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Between now and the end of March, Saturn is currently at 27 degrees of Capricorn, and it's going to move shortly into 28 degrees of Capricorn, and then 29, and then it's going to move into 0 degrees of Aquarius, and then into 1 degree of Aquarius. Saturn's going to be at the end of Capricorn, moving into Aquarius, and then it's going to stay in Aquarius for about 2.5 months. Then it's going to go retrograde and move back into Capricorn before standing still around the end of September and moving forward again. And then it's going to move into Aquarius again permanently around mid-December. Saturn loves being in Capricorn. It's its home. Saturn's attributes, when he's in a good mood, are all around structure, order, boundary, loyalty, hard work, discipline, reward. Capricorn's all around the nature of government, the nature of authority. But Saturn can also be the planet of restriction, limitation, frustration and challenge. And Saturn is like a bit of, not so much elastic, as more thick rubber. You can stretch it so far and then it bounces back on you. Now, there are certain charts that I want to look at in connection with Saturn, and I want to draw 1 or 2 ongoing assumptions. First of all, in connection, not the same as, but in connection with recent developments around Harvey Weinstein, and before that, Jeffrey Epstein. In the horoscope of Prince Andrew, the Queen's favourite son in England, Prince Andrew was born 5-6 minutes after the sun moved into Pisces. He's born on the 19th of February 1960 at 3:30 in the afternoon in London, UK. What's interesting is that he has Mars at 27 degrees of Capricorn and Venus at 28 degrees of Capricorn, and that Saturn in the sky is now sitting on top of his Mars, and it will be sitting on top of his Venus over the next week or 2. The pressure on him to talk to federal authorities in America is growing exponentially louder day by day. It's interesting that when the FBI eventually got access to Epstein's house and his island, they spent over a week going through the house, but they never talked about what they took from it in terms of videotapes, possessions. And I suggest the FBI have a lot of videotapes and a lot of evidence which they're not really publicising as yet. It's also interesting to note that in the horoscope of Ghislaine Maxwell, who was born on the 25th of December, I think it was 1961, don't quote me on that, but definitely born on the 25th of December, her Saturn is at 28 degrees of Capricorn, in exactly the same places as Prince Andrew's Venus and his Mars. And Saturn in the sky will conjunct Ghislaine Maxwell's Saturn. It will be her second Saturn return any day now. Now, she is currently whereabouts unknown. She may or may not be sitting on a lot of videotapes which she may use as a bargaining chip for herself. But it does seem as if she's about to either turn herself in or get nabbed or something, because I can't see her remaining quiet in the background for too much longer, not with her Saturn return ongoing. Bearing in mind this is just the first pass of Saturn. Saturn will pass at these degrees and affect these people again towards the end of the year. Interestingly enough, Saturn has also just passed on the Mercury position of a chap called Jez Staley, who is the CEO of Barclays Bank. Now he's got an interesting track record. On the positive side, he's a big advocate for HIV research since his brother was diagnosed with this, and he's put a lot of money and a lot of good time and energy into various HIV AIDS research projects. He's also, during his time at JP Morgan, he was primarily responsible for making JP Morgan a much more LGBT friendly company. So he's got one or two things going for him. But he's also someone who's been who was a regular visitor to Jeffrey Epstein's island in his personal yacht for many years after Epstein was initially convicted. And there is something uncertain here. He's also someone who's been fined by the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority in Britain, because of his dogged pursuit of a whistleblower. So this swings and roundabouts here. But I do note that just as Saturn hits his Mercury, so his name comes into the public domain, and a lot of questions are asked about his history with Jeffrey Epstein. And he has already sort of hinted that he's going to stand down in a year and a half's time. But bearing in mind his past track record and the fact that there's a shareholders meeting of Barclays Bank in the next few weeks, I think at the start of May at the latest, I wonder how much longer he will be at CEO position. Once Saturn leaves Capricorn around the third week of March and moves into Aquarius, it will then pass on the sun sign position of Placido Domingo, whose sun is at 1 degree Aquarius. Placido Domingo is currently dealing with about 15 to 20 cases of women claiming of inappropriate, unhealthy, illegal, unlawful complaints against him and his behaviour towards them over many years. Whether it is reported. Whether anything will come of this, I don't know. But with Saturn coming up to sit on his sun from now through to January, I suspect that his name is also going to be dragged into the mud. Although I stress there is no sign of any connection between Placido Domingo and any of the other people that I've mentioned on this video. Prince Andrew is reputed to be the Queen's favourite son. Her Majesty the Queen was born with the sun at 0 degrees of Taurus. Prince Charles, her eldest son, was born with the moon at 0 degrees of Taurus. Prince William, Charles's eldest son, was born with Jupiter at 0 degrees of Scorpio, opposite the Queen's sun, opposite his father's moon. Shortly, Saturn will pass at 0 degrees of Aquarius. Square William's Jupiter, square Charles' moon, square the Queen's sun. Seems to me that as we get into the end of March, the problems that have already besetted the House of Windsor over this year are set to become even more challenging and difficult. And I suspect that this may come from not what we see as the usual suspects. This is not going to be further tittle-tattle around Harry or Meghan, for example. I find it interesting that in the horoscope of Charles's wife, Camilla Parker Bowles, I think it's the sun, it might be Venus, I think it's the sun at 23 degrees of Cancer. The Saturn-Pluto-Jupiter conjunction is opposite her sun. And I hope she's in good health. I certainly think she's going through a massive transformation this year and that there's big things happening to her. If she were to suffer any type of challenge, this would affect then Charles's desire to become king. And it may be that William will then be sort of accelerated through the process, as many people already assume to be happening. But it seems clear to me But as we get into the last 10 days of October, we're going to see, the last 10 days of March, we're going to see a number of situations evolving around the world. Now, about an hour ago, on my first video of the day, when I was talking about the Mercury retrograde, I said that I thought that by the end of January we'd be through the hardest time of the year. But now, looking at what's coming up in the last 2 weeks of March, with Mars conjuncting Jupiter and Pluto, with Saturn hitting all of these famous people's personal stuff, it does seem that at the end of March we're going to see some pretty lurid headlines out there. And the old order is changing. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this develops. This is still only the first wave. This will not be resolved until later this year, when Saturn and Jupiter both move into Aquarius in the latter 2 weeks of December. That is when the final wave of this will pass. However, even then, I'm looking 3 or 4 years down the line when Pluto will pass on Prince Andrew's Venus and Mars, Ghislaine Maxwell's Saturn, Placido Domingo's Sun, square Prince William's Jupiter, square the Queen's Sun, square Charles's Moon. All of this will happen by 2024, 2025. And then when the events that come at that stage, we will trace them back to 2020. 2020 holds so many seeds for the future, but the way individuals and the race collectively manage this year is going to send long-term fishing lines into the future. So I'm not going to get on my moralistic high horse, but I do suggest that individually, as a client said to me today, he said, you know, he's been through one of my clients today has been talking to him. He's been through a lot in this last year of really sudden disruption. He says, but at the end of the day, he's done his best to hold his head up high on the grounds that you can't buy dignity and integrity and a clean conscience. You can only earn it for yourself. And if everyone were to hold true to that, the world would transform overnight. Okay, done. Catch you later, world. Bye.